Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to the EGU podcast for awakening and emerging entrepreneurs. We deliver gold nuggets weekly on mindset, energy, business, and all things spiritual to help you thrive. And I'm Michelle Reinhardt. And today we're giving you some dynamic communication tools to help you have conversations that count about things that matter. We're also going to show you how to say no and remain in your power. And I have a beautiful guest waiting in the wings to help us do that. Please welcome to the show, Gail Page. Hi, Gail.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks very much for inviting me on your show. I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it too, and you are very, very welcome. These are conversations that people need to understand so that everybody comes out of the communication process empowered. So let's help people do that, shall we? So Gail's a qualified coach. She's also a workshop facilitator and sought-after catalyst for change. And over the last 18 years, she's become the go-to person for individuals, teams and businesses when negative behaviours and sticky interpersonal issues crop up. And don't they crop up a lot? She helps you understand and have conversations that count about the things that matter most by identifying your triggers, what pushes your buttons and the barriers that stop you from asserting yourself. Gail's pragmatic, no fluff, no bullshit approach and her uncanny ability to quickly identify the root causes of issues enables you to develop workable solutions that build better personal and workplace relationships. Wow, Gail, when we connected, I had I just knew this was going to bring something to the table, to the show that can really help people on a very, very simple but very deep level. Mm-hmm. So to get the ball rolling, what do you find is the real reason conflict happens between people?
I think there's a few reasons. One of them can be differing values, different beliefs, assumptions. You know, we make up our own stories and then we start acting as if they're true. Mm-hmm. But I think at the root of it, fear plays a huge part. You know, it could be fear of repercussions. You know, if it's a conversation with if there's a conflict with your boss, then people fear that if they bring something to the table, then they may end up losing their job, or they'll not be put forward for a promotion. It could be that if it's in a family, then people won't say something because they don't want to upset the other person, or it's a fear of confrontation that actually ends up getting people into conflict. That which we fear the most, we end up bringing about, which is really quite sad.
Well, it is sad, but it's very, very true. And I've shared with you, and I'll share this with the audience. I've had times in my life where I have been too fearful to speak up, and it was predominantly at a time when I was much less confident than I am today. I was less of the person that I am today, and I know that's. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because that's the time when we need to be speaking our truth mostly, but we don't, because we don't have that backbone. We haven't got that, or necessarily the words, which is what I know we're going to help people with today as well.
Definitely, and I one of the things that really rattles me is that you go to school and they teach you how to read and write, and they teach you how to add and subtract, but nobody teaches you how to have an actual conversation. And, I've found that, I've coached CEOs and I've coached business owners, I've coached mums and dads and everybody and everywhere in between. And you'll find that sometimes somebody can be very, very confident in the boardroom, but they go home and they turn into this timid little mouse. Or they might be very, very in your face in the home, but go to work and they've got doormat written all over their forehead. So I don't think it's even about having a backbone. I think it's because people are not given these tools at a young age. I think that's a lot of the problem.
I completely agree, and it's becoming more and more of a problem with our kids with devices. They're not being taught the art of communication, and they're not actually needing to, because they're just sending a text message here or there, or a messenger, and they're not delving into those communication skills.
They're not able to have what I call true conversations, deep and meaningful conversations that count. And I say that because I used to run workshops called, how to make tough conversations easy. But it has quite a negative connotation, that. And I think for me, the conversations that matter the most, the ones that count the most, are often the ones that we find the most difficult to have, because we've got a lot invested in them, and that's where the fear jumps on board. We start telling ourselves all these wonderful stories, then we start to believe them, and then we start acting as if it's true. I'm a great believer in fear is just fantasy experienced as reality. So we create these fantasies in our minds, and they're never positive, and then we start acting as if all the worst that could happen will happen. And I say to people, well, what would happen if instead of you creating negative fantasies, you created positive ones and saw yourself going in to have a conversation with this person and having a really, really equitable outcome for everybody?
Okay.
Now, look at me as if I've gone out, as if to say, really? Can I do that? It's crazy. But we do this, don't we?
Well, we do this. I just want to go back. You said fantasy experienced as reality. I used to use the synonyms forget everything and run. It's like because conflict scared the shit out of me.
It does out of most people.
Yeah, it made me feel sick. I hated the idea of actually having to reveal my heart to people, which is what had to happen to get real about things. But yeah, it did. It used to scare the life out of me. So yeah,
it shows our vulnerability, isn't it?
Yes.
That's what it comes down to. I think for me, I've always been feisty. And even to the point of when I think it was about 12, my mum shouting at me, if you don't stop answering back, I'm going to throw my slipper at you. And I stood there with my arms outstretched, putting on a really brattish face and go on then, I dare you. And she did, and she smashed the window. I was not very popular.
Oh, you made yourself as large as you could for her to hit as a target as well.
That's it. I think for me, my love of communication came about because when I was in my 30s, I was at a party, and this woman that I'd never met before, I was having this conversation with a guy, and I love verbal repartee, and I'm really good at it. And this woman came up to me afterwards. She obviously heard my name from other people. Pardon me. And she said, Gail, I wonder how your life would change and who you could become if instead of being passive-aggressive, you learned how to be assertive. And then walked off. And I thought, wow, brave lady, because she didn't know me from Adam.
Yeah.
And I would love to meet that woman again because she changed my whole life.
Wow.
I went out and I bought my first assertiveness book. It has a silver cover. It was A Woman in Your Own Right by Anne Dixon, I think it is. And I just devoured it. And then after that, I read everything I could get my hands on. And I found a position for an assertiveness tutor. And I saw it in the paper, and I just looked at it, and I just felt this, bam, it landed with me. I thought, that's my job. Went for the interview, and I was waiting in the foyer of a school to be called through, and this teacher and a young lad, must have been about 13 years old, came through into the foyer where there was 3 other adults and 2 young people and myself, and you had a glass wall where all the admin staff was sat. And she proceeded to harangue him in front of everybody. And I thought, no, this is not on. So I was just about to stand up and have a very quiet word with her when I got called through for my interview.
Oh.
Get into the interview, got asked, have you got any questions? Oh, no, not a question, just something I need to bring to your attention. Told them what happened. And the guy who was chairing the panel said to me, I'm guessing you'd kind of like me to do something about that. And I just went, oh, hell yeah. And I couldn't help it. It just came out. So he laughed. He said, before or after? I said, oh, before, please. Then I can relax and enjoy my interview. So he looked at the panel as if, I don't know what the hell's going on here, but I'm just going to go do it. So off he went. I had a great time talking to the panel. Then he came back, had my interview. Next day, I get a phone call telling me that if I still wanted it, the job was mine. And part of the reason I got it was because I put that young man before anything.
Yes.
But what he didn't know was, although I had a teaching qualification, I had never taught assertive. But the universe stepped in, and 2 days later, I saw an assertiveness course from 9 till 12 on a Tuesday morning, and I was booked to start teaching it on a Thursday night. So I signed up for the assertiveness class, thoroughly enjoyed it, and ended up teaching it at night. And it was, for me, assertiveness is like, it's like a gift. Me being able to give the gift of assertiveness to people is a gift of choice.
Yeah.
Because when they know how, then they can make the choice as to whether they will be or won't be. But if they don't know how, they don't have that same choice.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So
yes, so that was my beginning.
Firstly, congratulations, because I'm pretty sure you may have changed that young man's whole life by doing that.
If I did, I'm very glad to have been part of it.
Yeah. It's and again, there's been plenty of times in my life where I've actually stood on the sidelines and watched people be verbally abused and not done anything about it because I haven't known how.
Yeah.
So let's help people do this, shall we? How do they go about becoming assertive as opposed to passive aggressive? If they are, of course, or how can they become more assertive and more in their power?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think they have to let go of the fear of confrontation. Because when we don't speak up, silence is seen as consent to behaviours and ways of being. And, you know, I hear so many people, you know, you said there have been times in the past where you didn't speak up because you didn't have the tools, you didn't know how.
That's right.
And that's why I say to everybody, learn the basics of assertiveness, you know. One of the things, I know I'm maybe preempting this, but one of the things that I'm giving away is I've got a sheet of different ways to say no without actually using the word. So that'll be useful for people coming up. What is it that we need to do about being more assertive? It's realizing that, you know, when somebody says something to you like, I don't agree with you, we immediately go on the defensive. And that's when we become aggressive.
Yeah.
Yep. And
so what would you do instead?
Well, what happens when we go on the defensive, when we present as being aggressive, we get into what I call the battle of messages.
Right.
So they're coming out with their battle of their message. You're coming out with your message. And it's like 2 4-year-olds going at it at loggerheads, banging heads, and no one's actually listening to a word that's being said because they're fighting their corner. Whereas instead of doing that and going on the defensive and becoming aggressive, if we took a breath and took a metaphorical step back and decided that what we were going to do, instead of going into a battle of messages, we would go into a learning conversation and find out what's going on, A, for ourselves, by checking in with ourselves. So what's this triggering? You know, what button is this pressing? You know, is it because the other person, it seems as if the other person's taking credit for something that I've done or somebody else has done? Is it because, you know, their body language reminds you of somebody that you've had a pretty bad time with in the past? if you check in with yourself, and it takes a nanosecond,
Yeah.
and then breathe again, and just say to the person, something like, that's a really interesting comment. I have a different perspective that I would like to share with you. Would you be open to that?
Mm.
Yeah? So that way, we as humans are innately nosy.
Yes,
So
true.
when we tell somebody we have a different perspective that we'd like to share with them, of course they're going to say, well, fair enough, because we're nosy. It's like, and it's especially good if somebody says, I don't agree with you.
Mm.
Then you can say to them, what is it that you see differently? Take it away from I don't agree with you, because that gets in a Scottish term, it gets our dander up.
Yeah, yeah.
Take it away from the emotive and just hear for facts. Ask them, can you explain that a wee bit more to me? Help me understand how you came to that conclusion.
That's powerful. I had to learn to not speak when my heart was racing, because that would happen. When my heart would start to race, I would know I was going into ego.
Yeah.
And I don't believe ego's a bad thing if it's on the right side for you.
Mm-hmm.
But my heart would race, and then I would know that I literally could not trust what might come out next. So I would just stop. I would never speak whilst I was in that state of flux. And yes, I love what you just say. Just metaphorically take a step back and breathe.
Take a breath.
My father used to always say, why do you think you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth?
Exactly.
We should listen twice as much as we speak.
Exactly.
And I've got to the stage now where I love other people's opinions and views on things, because there's just so much wisdom to be imparted by these conversations when you get to that stage where it's open and you can learn so much.
Exactly. And that's why going into and recognizing that you are being triggered.
Yeah.
And you have pushed one of your buttons. But, I hear so many of my clients in, one-to-one clients as well as in workshops say, oh, so-and-so pushed my buttons. And I say, well, do you know, the funny thing is that unless you if you hadn't reacted to it, they wouldn't know that button was there to be pressed. They're our buttons.
That's right.
I have a wonderful game that I use in my workshops where I get people to write down their 5 biggest hot buttons and put them on their arms. And then they chase each other around trying to hit everybody else's buttons, push everybody but stop everybody from pushing theirs. It's hysterical. It really is. But what I also get them to do, and this might be really good for the listeners, is to think about what their biggest hot button is, and then place it somewhere on their body that's easy to touch, and people won't look at you as if you've gone out if they see you doing it several times. And when I was a lot younger, they used to have these 3-in-1 stereos where they would have a record player, a cassette deck, and a radio. And some of them didn't have buttons or knobs. They had sliders, that you slid up and down.
Yeah.
Control the sound, the volume. And I always say to people, if you push, say on your hand, push as if that's your hot button. You push it, it's instant. If you put it, if you change that into a slider, and then just slide your finger down your hand, that's you taking away the emotion and the power of that button. And I've been in several meetings where I've had people that have been on my workshops, and I've watched when people's emotions are coming to the fore and they feel as if they have to defend their point of view. I tell you what, there's quite a few of those sliders are getting moved down very, very often. The beauty of it is they're aware of it, they're doing something about it so that they're in control.
Yep.
And they're going to respond instead of react.
Oh, you must drive people absolutely nuts.
Why do you say that?
Oh, because you're asking people to step up and be real and to go into their hearts and look at themselves rather than point the finger and blame others.
Exactly, because it's so easy to point the finger at those out there, but there's always 3 others pointing back at us. And I always say to them, when you and I work together, we're going to look at the 3 fingers pointing back at you because they're called me, myself, and I.
Yeah, nice.
And that's who we're going to work on first. Excuse me. And that can take people out of the comfort zone quite a bit. They find that quite challenging because it's so much easier to blame everything out there and not take ownership of it.
That's exactly right. And that, oh my gosh, this is very, very powerful because learning these skills have the opportunity to flow into your life in every aspect, every way, shape and form, because nothing is out there that we need. We have everything within.
That's it. And it's looking within and recognizing what's our stuff and what's not. And, I've had a guy gone off at me. Oh, my goodness me. He's threatening to punch his boss's effing lights out.
Wow.
And he was, he's 6'3", I'm 5'6", with a bit of luck and a bit of help on my high heels. And he's looking down at me and literally saying, I'm going to punch his effing lights out. And I just looked at him and I said, not in my workshop, you're not, matey. So you go walk it off.
Yeah, good.
10 minutes and be prepared to work. Do you understand? And he just looked at me and said, holy cow.
Yeah.
I said, you go now. And I made him work with his boss for most of the day. And by the time they'd finished, coffee time, he came up to me and he said, do you know something? He says, he's not such a bad guy either, is he? I said, I never thought he was.
No. Yeah,
so
very nice.
It's amazing when we start looking inwards and looking at our triggers, looking at what our buttons are, and choosing to respond. Because response comes from the head, reaction comes from the gut.
Yeah.
And if we react all the time, all that happens is we end up having foot and mouth disease.
Yeah, and with a lot of enemies as well, and nothing gets resolved. And at the very, very bottom line of it all, we end up sick.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Because people push all this angst.
Yeah, all this frustration and anger and
everything. Push it.
Yeah.
Then they wonder why they end up with bleeding ulcers and
that's right.
Digestion and goodness knows what all.
Yeah, beautiful. So we've got to the point here where it all comes down to communication. Mm. So in your experience, Gail, what's really stopping people from showing up in their truth? I mentioned fear, but I think there's more.
I think often, I don't know about what it's like in Australia, but in New Zealand, the tall poppy syndrome is massive.
Yeah.
I had never heard of the tall poppy syndrome until I came here.
Okay.
And do you have it? Is that the same in
Australia? Yeah, and there's another analogy that I have been told about, and it's the crabs in the bucket. I don't know if you've ever heard that. Like if you've got a bunch of crabs in the bucket and one reaches the top and gets its claws around the rim, then there's another one pulling it down back in with all the rest of them. Yeah, so it's always very hard to get out of the bucket.
It is.
And
the tall poppy syndromes come about with how we've been conditioned, how we've been socialized, the messages that we've had from other people, and also our need for external validation.
Yeah.
And that's really dangerous, because if we rely on other people to make us feel good, we literally give our power away.
We do.
Because they have the power then to make us feel good, bad, sad, or glad.
That's right.
Whereas if we can internally validate, and, even if we mess up, rather than go, oh my God, I'm such a failure, if we say to ourselves, hey, do you know something? I didn't do that as well as I would have liked to have. Next time I'll do it this way. Yeah?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it is around the tall poppy syndrome and fear what others think and needing the external validation. But I think it's also about not being able to set clear boundaries and expectations. We all need to have certain expectations of other people and how we allow them to treat us, how we give them permission to treat us. Pardon me, because I think that's so important, because, you know, I've seen people, friends as well as clients and colleagues, who've said to me, oh, it's all right for you. For you. And I said, do I give out the energy that says, hey, it's okay to treat me like a doormat? And they go, hell no. I say, I rest my case.
That's right.
People will only treat us in the way that we give them permission to.
Yeah, and that is in the way we hold ourselves, that is in our body language, that is in our language, our spoken word.
Exactly, and languaging is so important.
It is. Language carries a vibrational frequency of attraction. So, yeah, it's
so I think it's about being able to, first of all, look at what you're prepared to put up with and what you're not prepared to put up with. Yeah?
Yeah, and again, that if we're coming from a space of relatively low self-esteem and where this is happening a lot, and people, if your buttons are going off, then listen in and listen again and listen again, because this is pure gold. It's pure magic as to how you can change every aspect in your life with complete integrity.
Totally. And it's also, you know, it's being respectful of yourself and respectful of the other person. You know, when we give respect, we hope we'll get respect back, but respect starts from within. And it's about saying to ourselves and knowing what our boundaries are, what our expectations of other people are, and being firm and consistent with boundaries.
Yeah.
I can't say that strongly enough, because, you know, I've had people say, oh, you know, I have got boundaries, but I'll give you an example. When my daughter went to uni, when I got divorced, I decided I was going to have cream carpets throughout my house, because I was never allowed them before. So I thought, right, damn it, I'm having cream carpets. We had a rule that you came in the front door and you took your shoes off.
Yeah.
Then you came through into the hall. Fine. So anyway, off she went to uni, and I missed her like you would not believe, because she's an only child, and I didn't think I could have. So she's very, very special to me. So she came home for the first time, and she came in with her bags, and she walked into the hall. And I said, Lisa, shoes. Yeah, Mum, in a minute. And I said, Lisa, your shoes. Oh, well, I just want to dump this. It's really heavy. Anyway, I didn't follow through, because I was so pleased to see her. Yeah. And I just thought, oh, what the heck? And then she said to me afterwards, you know, Mum, she said, you didn't make me take my shoes off. And I said, well, yeah. And I said, oh, okay. So what should I have done? She said, you should have come to me and said, Lisa, this is a rule in our house. You do not walk beyond the front door with your shoes on. Take them off. I said, okay, fair enough. So thank you for that feedback. So I just need to ask you why you pushed it. When you came in, she says, I just wanted to see if the rules were still the same.
Yeah, wow. Fair enough, because rules can change. They're not necessarily set in stone, are they?
Consistency makes people feel safe.
Yeah, wow.
They know that if they do this behaviour, that will be the consequence.
Or the reward.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah,
I think that it's really, really important to have boundaries and stay firm and consistent with them, because it makes people feel safe. They know exactly where they stand with you.
Yeah.
The other thing is, you know, practice becoming proficient with saying no. Now, you don't have to use the word, and I love this because no is seen in really negative connotations. But, you know, so it's just, for example, if somebody says to you, have you got a minute? Which eats into our day, because so many people will say, have you just got a minute?
Yes, it's never just a minute.
We feel we've got to say yes. And then half an hour later, they're beaming because they've got their answer, and we're way behind in our work. Yeah. So something that we can say, hey, always use a person's name because it's a softener.
Okay.
So I would say, Michelle, this is not a good time for me. If you can come back in an hour, though, I'll be free to talk. So I think what I would really love people to get from this is you're not refusing the person, you're refusing their request.
Yeah.
Which is totally different. And being able to separate the two is huge.
Yes.
So another one, if perhaps sometimes, you know, your boss will come in and at the last minute say, you know, I don't know, oh, I need you to change your holiday dates. And I need an answer now. So, and that would put anybody on the spot and bring a lot of negative feelings up.
Yeah, especially if you've got flights booked and
exactly,
you know, vacation planned, and you know,
look. And it, you know, I'm not saying necessarily this would be like a big one, but just like a weekend break you've got planned or something.
Yeah.
To give yourself breathing space, because even though you know you're going to say no in the end, give yourself a bit of breathing space and just say, yes, I understand that you need an answer now, and the earliest I can get that to you is 3 o'clock. To which they will say, no, I need an answer now. And you play the broken record technique and say, yes, and I appreciate that you need an answer now. However, I can get that to you by 3 o'clock this afternoon. And you have to stand firm. You have to stand in your power.
Yeah, it's important.
People think if they go like that, you jump and then you say how high. But they need to realise that, you know, they have a duty towards you and you have a duty towards them. You know, a client of mine, I mean, if she was so passive that if you did something, she would apologise. And
I hear that a lot.
Yeah, and she said to me, she said, oh, God, she said, I'm so tired. And I said, what's the tiredness around? And she said, my boss, I've been up half the night. She says, my boss came in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and said to me, I need this report on my desk by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Oh.
And she says, I knew that's going to take me about 6 hours. So she says, I've stayed up all night. And she says, what's really pissed me off is that I saw him at lunchtime and I said, what did you think of the report? He says, oh, I haven't had time to read it yet.
Oh, my goodness.
And I said, well, I can understand why you would feel pissed off. Take a step back, though, and look at what part did you play in this? Because that's what I say to everybody. You know, if you're getting into conflict or you feel as if you're being walked over, you're being treated like a doormat, we always have to take a step back.
Yeah.
And ask ourselves, okay, so what part did I have to play in that interaction? So the part that she played was that she didn't say to her boss, this report's going to take me 6 hours, so I can get part of it to you by 10 o'clock and I can get the rest to you by 2 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, there was a lots of, oh, yeah, but you don't understand. And I said, take a step back. We did a bit of perceptual positioning, and she actually recognised that her part was to bring to her boss's attention that he's coming to her 1 hour before knock-off time, and he wants it 2 hours after she started work, and it was going to take 6 hours.
6 hour job. Yeah.
So what she could have done was say, I would really like to help you out on this. However, it's going to take 6 hours, and I can get part of it to you by 10 o'clock, and I'll get the rest by 2.
Yeah, so the big thing here is giving yourself some space to respond and reply as opposed to react and go into that victim mentality that you know, the poor me, the victim, which is the passive aggressive. That's what fires that. It feeds it.
Totally. And, you know, for her, when she said to her boss, yes, okay, her silence was seen as consent.
Of course.
And when somebody piles lots of work on us, or if we've got clients who are forever demanding that we do this and they want more for less, it's about us looking at, if we don't speak up, then that silence is seen as consent, and that's how we'll continue.
That's right, because that's what you're telling people is acceptable.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. This is the way I get treated. It's fascinating. I just love this, and I love that we're able to bring this back to self. Because at the end of the day, our evolution is reliant upon us being the truest and most authentic version of ourselves.
And I think sometimes, as we said earlier, if someone hasn't had those kind of models to learn from, and everybody does the best that they can with what they've got at a given moment.
Of course.
And there's no right, wrong, or indifferent. There just is.
Yeah.
People not thinking that they have to stay stuck, and that it always has to be. When that woman came up to me at that party, I was using passive aggressive language in a fun way.
Yeah, even worse.
And I knew I was doing it. I was never like that with friends or when I was at work and what have you. So I knew I was doing it because, being a force's wife, you have to be able to stand your own corner. Otherwise, those guys would make mincemeat of you.
Yeah.
But I was really lucky that she came into my life and she just brought that to my attention.
Yeah.
And I realized that although I wasn't like that in my day-to-day life, I still wasn't as assertive as I would like to be.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know how.
Yeah.
I'm feisty, and I'm still feisty.
But you can exactly be feisty and be assertive as opposed to passive aggressive. Yeah. Yeah.
And as I say, passive aggressive people create such bedlam at work.
Yeah.
I've seen teams ripped apart by it.
Yeah.
Ripped apart because something as simple as making a sarcastic comment to a colleague or a member of your family, and then the person reacting to it saying, well, that's not very nice. Then the person who's being passive aggressive says, oh, for goodness sake, look at her. She can't even take a joke.
Yeah.
A double whammy. So, note to self, we need to regulate I'm doing this, but nobody can see me. We need to regulate our thinking and stop opening our mouth to speak because we'll only react. We need to take that breath, as we said earlier.
Yep. And
breathe and just say, okay, how am I going to respond to this?
Yeah.
Even if it's something as simple as saying, that's a really interesting comment, and then saying nothing.
I was just going to say, even if you just say, wow, that's really interesting. And I do say that to people now. I'll just say, wow, I've never thought of it like that. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes I don't want to go any further with the conversation.
Exactly.
Some people you can't have these intelligent conversations with. They're not ready to hear it. They're not ready to assume the responsibility.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So
and when somebody says something, and sometimes inside, I'm sure we could just want to slap them. But by saying to them, you could be right.
Yeah.
You're actually saying nothing.
Exactly.
All you're saying is they could be right. Yeah. But all they will hear is, oh, she thinks I'm right.
I'm happy with that. Yeah. Yes. And then the ego feathers sit down and we're all happy again. It hasn't stopped anything, has it? So Gail, I love this so much. I'm sure that there are lots of little gems that people are picking up that are listening. And for those of you that are listening, and I just applaud you because it just proves that you're ready to take off and fly in a whole new area of your life, which is just beautiful. So, Gail, may I ask you, please, for 3 hot takeaways to help people to take forth in their lives from our conversation?
Okay. First thing is, I would say, choose to stand in your power and own your truth and your part in every interaction that you have. And remember that people will only treat us in the way that we give them permission.
Yeah, very, very, very wise.
Also, silence is seen as consent. The other thing is, don't let things fester. or take a Band-Aid approach, because it's not worth it.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I'm known for is I don't do the surface stuff. I get right down and dig deep, get to the core, and that way, if you take the sort of the Band-Aid approach and the fester, you have to clean the wound out first. You have to know where the wound is, then you have to clean it out to let it go. So that's why letting things fester and taking a Band-Aid approach to it does not work.
Yeah, and I think too, it's really important to mention that if you do put a Band-Aid over something, it will represent.
Oh, totally. It's like having an elephant in the room. It's there. Everybody knows it is.
Yes.
Nobody talks about it, and all that happens is that you just end up with a big pile of poo.
Yeah.
It's still there.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, it's still there. Absolutely. Thank you. That's really important.
I think the last one is become comfortable with saying no. And realize you don't have to say the word. You can just refuse the request in some of the ways that I've mentioned earlier. And have the confidence to stand up and say, I have a different perspective that I would like to share with you.
Yeah.
And then share it. You know, practice in the car when you're driving to work. Think about things that have happened in the past that didn't quite go the way you would have liked. Yeah. And then ask yourself, if I was standing in my power, if I was able to own my truth and own my part in every interaction that I'm having, if I was able to nip things in the bud at the get-go and I had the confidence to assert myself, how would I deal with it?
You know, this is very timely for me because there is a situation going on in my world at the moment that needs me to step up and do this. So it's just hit me like a brick.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't think it was such a big thing. So, yeah, thank you for raising that because there's no matter how far we go, there's always more to grow.
Oh, maybe that's something we can talk about offline.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that very much. Mm-hmm. Now, Gail, I'd love for you to share with our listeners where people can find you, and I know that you've very generously offered some resources for people, and so if you could share how they can get their hands on those, please.
Yep, so my email address is Gail, G-A for Apple, I-L, at positivepathways, pathways has got an S, .co.nz. So it's Gail at positivepathways.co.nz. If they send me an email and put Michelle's podcast in the title, so that I know who they are, then I will send them the resource. Beautiful.
And there's 3 options for you, guys and girls. So you can choose how to recognize the characteristics of different behaviours.
And that's a handout that's got the physical behaviours, so the body language, and I just need to check in my book exactly what's in it because it's been a wee while since I've actually looked at it. There's also one about how to recognise your hot buttons and what to do about it. So there's the characteristics of the different behaviours. So there's the behaviour of the passive, of the assertive, the aggressive and the passive-aggressive behaviours. And there's the non-verbals, the beliefs, the emotions and the goals of people who are displaying these characteristics.
Beautiful.
One thing I would love for people to take away from this is I never talk about difficult people. I talk about difficult situations, difficult behaviours, because if we can't separate the person from the behaviour, we will never resolve anything.
Yeah.
But if we say, I'm finding this person's behaviour difficult to deal with, rather than he's a difficult person, much better outcome.
Yeah, I learned that early in my parenting days with the kids, Just, you never say that they are naughty. You just say their behaviour is naughty.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it's, that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Separating behaviour from the person. The other one is a handout that has different ways to say no without actually saying the word. So it's like mini scripts. And I have to say, my clients love that. I do a lot of it with people, and they love the fact that they've got these scripts that they can dip into their little tool bag, pull it out and practice before they actually have to deal with the situation, because there's no such thing as practice makes perfect, but practice makes proficient.
Yeah. And then you've also offered a script for giving and receiving feedback as well.
That's right.
Thank you. That's very, very generous of you. I think I'll be asking for all of those, please.
I think you might be setting a precedent there.
Oh, true. I didn't say that on air, did I? Only one, guys and girls. Gail, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on the show and for sharing your pearls of wisdom. I have loved having you as a guest. Thank you so very much.
I've loved every second of it. If anybody out there, if the people out there hear this and they can take away from it that the power is within them, and if I can move from being passive-aggressive to teaching people how to be assertive, how to stand in their power and own their worth, ignite their potential and elevate the performance, you can do it too.
You know what? I'm just going to end the show on that, Gail, because I just love it. So, guys and girls, look into the show notes if you'd like to connect with Gail or myself. You can also find us within my online community at Entrepreneurs Globally Unite. We would love to help you make quantum leaps and bounds in your life. That is why we are here. So please reach out. The journey of a lifetime begins with a single step. And it's very, very hard to take those steps alone. So reach out and connect. Get your hands on the scripts that can help you. Re-listen, revisit this if you need help with your communication. And enjoy having dynamic conversations that count. It will change your life. Again, Gail, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me.
See you later, everyone. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.